Hi everyone, Sarah Shimazaki, pronouns she, her here. I'm excited to be back here on Merrell's page for Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And I'm just gonna wait a little bit for my friend Brianne to join. I think I just saw her join. And then we're gonna get started. So thank you so much for being here. And I am about to invite Brianne. Here we go. So, oh, there she is. Hi.
Uh,
How's it going?
Good. Can you hear me all right?
I can, yeah. And you can hear me?
Yes.
Yay. All right, awesome. Cool. So, hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this Instagram Live on Merrell's page. My name's Sarah Shimazaki, pronouns she, her. I'm the host and producer for an awesome podcast called Outside Voices Podcast. Definitely go check us out. And I'm really, really happy and excited to be here. We're doing this weekly series for Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And today I'm joined by Brianne. And I'd love, so everyone, yes, say hi, Brianne. I'd love for you, Brianne, to introduce yourself however you'd like.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for inviting me into your day. My name is Brianne Lauro. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm from the Big Island of Hawaii, so the traditional lands of the Native Hawaiian people. I'm a descendant of Filipino contract laborers who came to the islands in the early 1900s to come and work on the plantations for pennies. And my great grandfather and my great grandmother on my dad's side, what they did aside from the plantation was they fished. My great grandfather was a net maker. He made nets out of handmade tools that he made out of bamboo. And my great grandmother was always known for carrying around her bamboo stick pole. So very much their values and their practices uh, were passed down. They ended up taking all their children, to the beach, took them along when they went and did those things. One of those children being my grandfather. And yeah, it got passed down. My dad, my father, he's a hunter. On my mother's side, very much my papa or my grandfather is a very respected fisherman. He taught all his sons how to fish, and they're teaching their children. So yeah, at a very young age, my dad, he taught me how to hunt. He taught me how to fish and how to dive. And yeah, that's a bit about me.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's so beautiful. Just that lengthy history all in one place. Like just that really beautiful sense of place. I really appreciate you calling in your ancestors, and I'm excited to dig in a little bit into your stories and their stories. And yeah, excited that you're here. A big part of doing this series is just really celebrating Asia Pacific Islander heritage and our connections to nature and the outdoors that, is maybe not like hiking or mountain biking, but it's this really beautiful ancestral cultural connection. And so I think there's so much that you have to share on that topic. And so you kind of delved into it a little bit of growing up and learning hunting and fishing from your parents, but I just would love if you could paint a picture for us of those earliest memories outside.
Oh yeah. So I would say the earliest memories I have is, well, all of them. It's always with family. The earliest memories I have is always with family. Family is what connects me to the outdoors. And so my earliest memories is with my father. I just remember it would be the weekends. And I remember he would wake me up when it was still dark. So you would go outside and there would be stars still out. It was so early. And he would wake me up. He would get the truck ready, all that kind of stuff. And we would drive up like this bumpy stretch of road up to the forest. We call it like the mountain. And we would go and we would get out. And I remember I would fall back asleep on the way up there. And then he would park the truck, it would still be dark, and he would be like, okay, we're gonna start walking. And I just remember it being so cold, and you know, uh I would start walking, but then something happened. It was like I would wake up with the day. It's like you would be so sleepy and so cold, and you would be walking, everything would be dark, and then the sun would start to come out. And then it gets a little warmer. And then you hear like the tops of the trees, like, you know, begin to echo. And like that's just how I grew up. I did that every single weekend with my father. As far as the ocean goes, I remember they used to bring me along on the boat all the time. So when everyone would go diving for fish, my papa used to take us out. And I remember when I was too young to jump into like the rough water, I would stay on the boat with my papa. So, you know, he would bring them to the spot, wherever they would go and get fish. They would jump off, and I would just stay on the boat when the boat would be rocking, and I would be fishing with my papa. And that's my earliest memories, is just always with my family.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That sounds amazing. And it really just sounds like that was the lifestyle. You just went to the mountain every weekend. You went fishing for your meals, right? And to celebrate with your meals. And so it just sounds like that was just your everyday. Your everyday was spent outside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So we've been talking about this relationship between the outdoors and ancestry and heritage. And so what does that look like for you and your family? You mentioned a really strong practice, cultural practice around fishing and hunting. So what does that look like for you and your family?
Uh, what that looks like, it's just taking every opportunity I have to go out. I'm so blessed that I'm able to still hunt with my dad to this day. And I do it with my siblings now, my younger brother and my younger sister. And it also looks like not only taking the opportunities and like continuing what I was able to do when I was younger, but also new opportunities. For example, my uncle, my dad's brother, I never, he's been fishing for over 40 years. And growing up, I never went fishing with him. And so what that looks like is at first I asked him, I'm like, can I go with you? And he was so excited to take me. So it's, whenever I see his like, his trailer, hooking up to the boat, it's just taking those opportunities to go out with him. So just, doing that with my family, the old and the new. And it's also really getting to know the personal stories of the ones who came before me. Before this year, I only really found out that how little I knew of my family until this year. I mean, I knew they came from the Philippines. I knew they ended up somewhere in Hawaii. I was aware that they worked on the plantation, but I didn't know what it all meant. I didn't know like those personal stories that only family know. I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so like one aspect that I didn't know is, again, I said like my great grandfather, he was this net maker that people from around the island would come to him just for his nets. They would tell him exactly what type of fish they wanted, what type of depth he would be throwing it, them throwing their net at, and what kind of weight. And like why it's so important, for me to go out with my father, for me to go out with my uncle, is my great grandfather, no one knows how to make nets in my family anymore. No one does. And so I just find it's just like this responsibility that I have, is how do we preserve these stories? Like my great grandfather, he was this net maker and I didn't even know it. And so yeah, it's really connecting to the past while being present with those before me. And yeah, that's how I connect.
Yeah. Wow. So how did you find out that story?
Yeah, so again, it was my uncle. He lives right across from me. And I just never went over to his house growing up. And so, like a few of you may know this, but I went to Colorado State University for my bachelor's degree. I got sent back home because of the pandemic in the latter half of my junior year. And so I've been at home for over a year. And with that opportunity, I was like, I am going to go over to my uncle's house. Like, I'm just going to go. Even though I haven't gone for years, I'm going to go. And it just began with just, talking with him. And then he started opening up and sharing with me about my family. And he shared this book with me. And this is why it's so special. This is my great grandfather.
Wow.
This is my great grandfather with a net that he made. And this is his hands making one of the nets. And so this was this is called Laulima. It's this project that the high schoolers in that town at the time, they went and interviewed people from the community and got to know their stories. And one of the people that they interviewed was my great grandfather. And so I have quotes, even though I can't hear his voice, I have quotes that he said. I could see his hands and the way it made the nets. And so even more so, I'm like, how much of these stories, these pictures and these faces have I not seen? So yeah, it's just taking the time and being respectful of when those stories will come out and just being patient with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And that's amazing that you were able to share that book and see those pictures too and read the quotes.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really amazing. Yeah, I think that oftentimes it's all in the oral tradition, the stories, right? That's how knowledge gets passed down. And so oftentimes we don't know about our own history. Like we didn't learn it in school. There aren't a lot of books about it. And so it's just about asking family members and really hearing about certain stories about their relationships to each other, to the land. And then that's how knowledge and wisdom gets passed down. So
Right.
Thanks for sharing them.
And like me not knowing, it's like me knowing now just the personal stories. I understand why, fishing with like a simple stick pole with just a hook and line, why it was so special to my great. I understand why throwing that and like taking the children out to go and do that at the beach that we still go to today. I understand why that's so important because I know that history. It's not these people who I came from that like, oh, they fished, they went to the beach. Like, no, they had a hard life working for pennies on the plantation. And, they worked so hard. No matter how hard you worked, you got a certain pay. And so that was their way of like freedom and joy that money or the plantation couldn't give.
Yes, absolutely. So do you think you're going to try and learn net making, or what's that journey going to look like for you?
Well, I know that. So my uncle, he said, he was really young when he saw my great grandfather making nets. And because he was so good, and when you're young, you feel like the older people in your life will always be there. He was the oldest and he wasn't able to make it. And, he said that's a deep regret that he has. But you know what? What he's doing instead is he's teaching me other fishing practices that they taught him. And he goes and he takes me out on the boat and just, even though I can't learn net making exactly how my great grandfather did, what I can do is I can learn more about him. I can learn, I could learn more about my great grandfather. I could learn more about the types of fishing that they do. And that just all comes from like, being out on the water and going. I could read these like kind of books and all that kind of stuff. I could read everything in the world. I could read every book off the shelf. But I think what's most important and what, at least to me, is going out on the water and seeing like what my uncle sees and what my great grandfather saw. you know, and realizing how some of those things may have changed.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes into, I want to learn more about the kind of fishing that you do. And we did have a question that came through. And by the way, to everyone listening, feel free to type your questions, or I guess it's like this because you're on your phone. Type your questions in the comments and we'll try and answer them. But I have a question from someone that asks, what's your most memorable spear fishing experience?
Oh, okay. A recent one. And when I say recent, I say within this past year. So anyways, I very much got more into spearfishing within this past year. Again, I went to Colorado, and you know, I never for years I was like, I am okay with being landlocked. But then in my junior year, I just had this like, I need to see the ocean. And I remember I would just watch YouTube videos of people spearfishing, like Kimmy Warner. And I was like, if I ever had the opportunity to be at home, I would go spearfishing. So that's what I did. Went spearfishing within this past year. But I think out of all the experiences I had, nothing could beat the first time I found a tako or an octopus or a he'e, whatever you want to call it. Just because I remember for like, I would admire all these people who were able, all these old timers who were able to just go out in the water and, you know, come out with all these tako, octopus again. And there's a certain skill set that you need, and like they call it the taco eye. They're in these holes and you have to be able to kind of spot them out. You know, they change color, they camouflage to the reef. And I just remember sitting on the beach weekend after weekend and seeing all these divers come out with like two taco, and then you had like the old timer who came out with like a bag full of them. And I just remember I would just be in the same exact bay as they were, circling and circling. And I was like, I don't understand how you find one. You know, how they describe it, like, oh, a rock will be overturned. Oh, you'll see a trace of like shells. And I'm like, the whole ocean looks like that. But like, I don't know how long trying to find it. But then one day I ended up spotting one because I saw it move. And it was so funny because I was with my dad and I pointed to it and I was so overly excited because I was like, I found it. But then at the same time, I'm like, how do we grab this? Like, you know, what you do is you take your spear and you tickle it until it slowly comes out and you grab it, you know. And I've seen people do that and I've heard of people do that, but I've never done it myself. Like pointing to my dad, we were going up and down, and it was so funny because he ended up going. You know, I was kind of catching my breath. I was like, I have to relax because I was overly excited. He ended up going down. He went to grab it, and the thing, I don't know if he touched it or if it moved, but he pulled back his hand and the thing just like took off. And I remember I was like, why did you hesitate in the water? And I kid you not, I was like, that's going to be the last taco I ever find. That's going to be the last one I ever find. And I just think that it's just such a fun story. And it's one of my favorites from this past year.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like you searched for so long, you finally had it. And
Finally had it. And it's like weeks of like, not even weeks, months of just seeing people just come out the same exact place. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna, it's gonna take years. No one in my family, at least that I know of, knew how to dive for taco or find them. So I was like, it's never gonna happen. So it was that feeling of excitement and being like, that's how diving, and I feel like that's how hunting and even fishing is. It's like, it's very much so many emotions at once.
Yeah, actually, that's another question from someone. And I don't know, this might be a hard one, but someone asked if you could only pick diving or hunting, which would you choose?
Oh, that is so Um, ooh, that's so hard. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's hard. Dad's a hunter.
Mm,
My family are fishermen. You know what? I would stick with hunting. That's
really?
something that I did since I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. I did
Wow.
weekend, and you know what? I did it for over a decade, and it's brought me so much joy. And I feel like for even more decades, I think that joy would only increase being up in the mountains. So
Can you tell us some of those memories hunting with your dad?
yeah, there's so many, there's different types of hunting. So I learned, well, okay, so first it was very much you go up to the forest and um I think he had two dogs at the time, and they would bark when they would see a pig. There's that type of hunting. There's a type of hunting that you do with a rifle, and then you did the type of hunting that you do with a bow. So that's kind of how I progressed. um let's see. I think let yeah, the hunting, the earliest memories that I described, that was
Hmm.
very much going up in the mountains with my dad's like two dogs. One of them was Hoku and one of them was Mustang. I remember their name. Um, but yeah, I just remember doing that. And then fast forward to this day, I'm hunting with, a bow and arrow. This past weekend, my dad harvested a young ram, so a sheep, and he did it with a recurve bow, so a stick bow. Um, and that was just so special because I was up on this hill with my brother looking over, because I spotted the sheep and my dad was near it, and I was kind of guiding and directing him. And I was like, "Look, Noah," like that's my brother's name. I'm like, "Look, he's about to shoot." And I was like, I wonder if this is what my dad felt when he watched me when I was young, you know? So yeah, those are my memories hunting.
Wow, thank you. We have a quick question. Someone just asked in the comments, what is API? So I have a quick answer to that. That's Asian Pacific Islander. And then I have one more question from the little question sticker. But again, if anyone has more questions, please feel free to type. What is something about Hawaii you wish more people knew or understood?
Oh, ooh. I would say oh, that's hard. Well, it's not hard. I would say like the local people, the local culture. Um, I'm just I'm just thinking of like the way that, again, I grew up very much like the way that my family, my big family always gathered together. The way that, like, for example, we all would always gather together at the beach. And when I say family, I mean like blood related. I mean, next door neighbor. I mean auntie and uncle. Like, you know, all of them are our families, whether it's blood related or not. And so I just wish people could I don't know. It's just I want to say experience it. It's not. It's a different from what you see at the resorts and the hotels. It's not the type of luau's that they have. There's dancers up on the stage. It's so, I don't know. It's just I just wish there was more respect for the local people in the community, and I don't know, just listening and being respectful. Um, just because the local people here are so special. We're so connected together in community. We're generous. We care for each other. Like, for example, what my uncle, he remembers, my grandfather, they would come back with the boat and they would have like lobsters and fish, and like their neighbors would kind of be like peeping out the window looking at all they caught. And my uncle was like, and my grandfather would tell my uncle, here, go and he would get a bucket and he would put fish in it and he would say, go and give them fish. And my uncle was young, and he would be like, why? He was like, because that's what we do. That's
Mm.
what we do. So I wish that people, yes, you could understand it, but yeah, like a respect for that in a way.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's like anti-competition, anti-capitalist. It's just really community oriented, taking care of each other, taking care of the land. That's
Mm-hmm.
really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, we just got a new question. What is the most common misconception or stereotype that you face every day, if you feel like answering that?
Oh, would say I would say misconception or stereotype is what and who, like divers or hunters, fishers and divers, like who they are, what their values are,
Mm.
the way that they conduct themselves, even what they should look like. I feel like there's so many misconceptions. And I'm like, when I say like, oh, we hunt, like some people who didn't grow up around that, there's this misconception that pops up into their head. And I really hope that what I described today is different from that. It's more than just, going out and killing something. It's not that. I hope that people understand, like, fishing is more than just fishing. It's not just a recreational activity that people do. Like, it is a way that people, like, it is a way that we take care of ourselves. The land and the ocean has taken care of us so well, when other things haven't. And
Mm.
I just people and you know what, hunters, people who hunt, people who fish, people who spear dive, they have such, I'm not, the people that I know, they just have this respect for place. And I wish people, when they thought of us, they thought of that.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people think that think of that perception of humans maybe having big egos and like killing other animals and sort of being like top predator, but what you're describing is more about a reciprocal relationship where you're really, when you're talking about your great grandfather, really observing the currents and understanding the environment and understanding then how to like make nets, right? And you're talking about tako fishing, and that takes a lot of just like observation and a relationship with the earth. And it's not just about like taking whatever, right, whatever you can, and
Right.
just like sort of that going back to that competition mentality and just wiping it all out, but it's this relationship of like, I'm taking care of you, you're taking care of me. And that's, I think that's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all the questions. Someone says, I respect all you do. Thank you for sharing your story and experience with hunting. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we sign off? I just want to leave space for that.
I would say wherever you are in your life, like, you know, whatever, like whoever you are, wherever you are in life, like the outdoors is always there. Like the outdoors is so different from people. When you go out onto the land, when you go out into the ocean, like you don't have to come a certain type of way. It's a very much come as you are. So I
Mm-hmm.
just want to encourage everyone, you don't have to have all these experiences. You don't have to you don't have to come from a family full of people who, you know, really were connected to the outdoors, and you don't have to look a certain type of way. I look very different from a lot of um hunters and fishers and divers. You don't have to wear these, like, you don't have to have all these things. Like, it's there, and it's always been there. So I just want to encourage you to go as you are. And yeah, it's such a gift. It's such a gift. So that's what I would want to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you again for coming on here and sharing your amazing stories with us. I'm really happy I got to talk to you. And thank you, Merrell, for hosting this conversation for Asian Pacific Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, API Heritage Month. That's why there's an acronym. And thank you all, everyone here, for joining us. Really, really glad that you're here to listen to these stories and this conversation.
Great. Thank you so much for having